Hey, today's
Thank you.
daf. Be'ezus Hashem is
Uh,
Metzia daf Chuf Zayin, and we're going to start from Chuvuv Omid Beis by the Mishnah. Okay, by the Mishnah. So let's say the Mishnah begins. Chmutza b'chanus. If you find something in a store, okay, let's say you go into a hardware store and you find something on the floor, okay. So harei eli shaloi, whatever you find there, you're allowed to keep it because the store is a public place, and people walk in and out of the store, so you're allowed to keep it. Bein hateva lechenveni, between the cashier, the cashier's table, and the cashier himself. So like right by the cashier in front of him. So then, if you find something there, shalchenveni, obviously it belongs to the store owner. He must have dropped it. That's fine. That makes perfect sense. Now, lifnei shulchani, let's say you go into a banker, a money changer. So lifnei shulchani, now notice it says in front of, find anything in front of the money changer, harei elu shelo, you're allowed to keep it. Anything in front of the money changer. But bein hakisei v'la shulchani, but between the kisei is the table where he puts his like suitcase with different denominations of bills, and the shulchani, the money changer himself. So it's like in between him and where his money exchange is his table. So then any dollar that you find there, harei elu shulchani, belongs to the money exchanger. Now we're going to discuss this lifnei. It doesn't say, we're going to discuss why it says in front of the money changer. We'll see all that in the Gemara. The Mishnah says, halakeach peres mechaber, someone who purchased fruits, let's say from a fruit store, or sheshilach lechaber peres, or his friend sent him a gift of fruits, let's say for shlach manos, and you cut open the pineapple or whatever it was, and you find inside money. Harei you're allowed to keep it. But if it had a certain if the money was tied up in a certain way, so then noitel umachros, you take it and you announce it, because maybe the tying is a siman, or how much money you found is a siman, so you can't keep it. Mara is going to discuss it as well. Amar Rab Lazar said, "Afilu menochan al gabi shulchan." Even if you find something on the money table, that where the person has the money exchange, and you find it, let's say, but you imagine a bank on the teller's table. If you find it, you're allowed to keep it, because the reason why Rabbi Lazar said that is because normally a person comes there from the public and puts money on the table and then asks it to be exchanged. So the money that's landed on the table is not the banker's money, but it's the public's money. It's somebody from the public, and he probably gave up hope after leaving it there. Tanan, so the Gemara wants to say, lifnei shulchani. The Mishnah says, only if you find it in front of the banker, harei el shlo, you're allowed to keep it. Ha'al gal shulchan, but if you find it on the teller's table, it would seem to the shulchani that belongs to the banker. So not like Rabbi Lazar said. And then the Gemara says, aim is safer. But if you look at the end of the Mishnah, it says, bein hakisi l'shulchani. If you find it on the floor between the banker and the table, shal shulchani, it belongs to the banker. Ha'agabe shulchan, but if you find it on top of the table, shaloi, then you're allowed to keep it. So there's the Mishnah indicates both directions. Who does it belong to? You can't derive any conclusion from the Mishnah as to who the money would belong to if you actually find the money on the table. Says the Gemara, Rab Lazar Homanale, but Rab Lazar himself, how did he know what it belonged to? What? How did he know it belonged to the shulchani? It belonged to the banker. If you belong, you're allowed to keep it if you find it on the table. Rava said, "Masnisin kishesa." Rab Lazar had a question on the Mishnah. My ear, you the tana ben akisa l'shulchani shal shulchani. Why does the Mishnah say that if you find it on the floor between the table and the banker, you're allowed to keep it? Listen, al gabe shulchan. Let the Mishnah say that if you find it on the shulchan itself, the banker is allowed to keep it. Inami, the Mishnah could have said, Matzah b'shulchanonis, kidutana bereisha. Why did the Mishnah say that if you find it why didn't the Mishnah say if you find it in the money exchanger's store, you're allowed to keep it, like it says Matzah b'chanus. If you find it in any hardware store, shalom, you're allowed to keep it. Why does the Mishnah say lifnei shulchani if you find it in front of the shulchani? Even if you find the money mamish on the table of the banker, you're allowed to keep it. Obviously, if the banker didn't know it was there, because it probably came from somebody who came to the banker to try to change the money, and therefore you're allowed to keep it. Zog Gemara, if you purchase friends from your, let's say you bought fruits from a fruit store and you found money inside, you're allowed to keep it. Rosh Lakish said in the name of Yanai, Lo Shana, it was not taught, Ella, go to the top of Zayin Amar Aleph, Ella, Belakeach, Min, you buy it from a Tagar, right? If you buy it from a Tagar, then you buy it from a wholesaler. So the wholesaler's fruits comes from many different people. So therefore, the person that put the money in the fruits, then he probably gave up hope that he's going to ever give it back. You, the purchaser from the wholesaler, is allowed to keep that money that you find in the fruits. If you buy your fruits from, let's say, upstate Long Island, you know who the owner is. He grew it on his farm, and you bought it directly from him, and then you find money in that. There's only one person that money could belong to, the person you bought it from. You have to return it. It was taught in front of a bright Nachman. It wasn't taught you're allowed to keep the money if you're buying from a wholesaler. If you buy it from Whole Foods, if you buy it from a farm belonging to one person, and you find money there, you have to call it out. Rav Nachman asked the question. How do you know that money that you find in the fruits belongs to the owner of the farm? He has workers working from him, and maybe he contracted out somebody to pick the fruits off his field. So how do you know definitely it belongs to that person? Maybe it belonged to one of his workers, and his workers must have given up hope of getting it back, right? So how do we square off that? So the Gemara says, Malay Ismay. So should I erase that? There's something wrong with that brisa? Malay. So Rav Nachman answered, no, like that we know that the workers that this farm owner uses is his own Goyish slaves. Whatever belongs to them belongs to the owner of the property. So therefore, the owner of the farm. Therefore, if you find it there, you're allowed to keep it. Now, you have to return it back to that owner. Okay, let's just do the psukim, by the way, just to get clear and understand the Mishnah. These are very, very important psukim, 3 psukim that discuss the inyan of returning a lost object. So I'm just called up on the screen the psukim of the Torah. It says the Torah, like, it shouldn't be such a thing that you see the ox of your friend or his sheep nidachim that is lost v'salamta mehen, and you're gonna pretend you don't see it and then ignore it. You have just the opposite. You have a mitzvah to say hashev teshivim la'achicha. You have to return it to your brother. If it gets lost again, return it back to your brother. Get him back his ox and sheep. V'em loy karav elecha. If your brother is not near you, let's say you know who he is, who belongs the sheep or the ox, but he's not near you. Let's say he's in another country. V'lo yadate, or v'lo yadate, his vav means or. V'lo yadate, or you don't know who the owner of the ox or the sheep is. V'safta, bring the ox or sheep into your house. V'hoya imecha, it should be with you, you should watch it. Ad droish achicha oisai, until your brother can prove that it belongs to him. He has to prove that it belongs to, that he's the owner of the sheep and the ox. And you return it to him. How he proves it, we're going to discuss that in the Gemara. Same thing should be done if he loses a donkey. If he loses his shirt. Anything that he loses, it's lost from him. And you are the one that find it. You have no permission to ignore it, whatever you find, not return it to its owner, but you have to return it to him. That's the psukim in the Chumash. So now let's read the Mishnah. Afa simla, hoise b'chlal kol elul. The Torah tells you as examples of items you're losing. It was included in whatever the Torah said. anything that you lose. V'lama yatzos, why did the Torah single out an example of a item of clothing as the example of something that is lost that you have to return? It teaches you a lesson about the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. An item of clothing, there's a way to identify it with simonim, with signs. You can prove that it belongs to you by identifying distinguished marks on the item of clothing. And the guy wants it back. He didn't give up hope. Anything that has a simon to it, and the guy wants it back, he didn't give up hope, so you have to return it. So, my bechlal kol eilus. What does it mean that the Torah, that the word simla was included in everything else? The Torah says anything your brother loses, you have to return it. So the question of the Mishnah is, why do we single out simla? So it teaches you that as long as your brother did not give up hope, only then you're obligated to return it. That's what we learn. And also, we're not sure yet, but if it has distinguished marks, that's a way for your brother to identify that the item belongs to him. Amar Rava. So the Rava now goes even one step further than the Mishnah. The Mishnah only identified why simla is the example. The question is, Lama li the kasav rachmana. Why did the Torah write shar, chamar, sev, simla? Why did the Torah write all these things? Tzricha, it needs it. It needs to write all three examples. The kasav rachmana simla. If the Torah would have written item of clothing, that only time you could identify an item is as yours, only if you can have edim that say that this item belongs to you, or you can provide distinguished marks on the item itself to prove that it belongs to you. Avachamar, a donkey, all donkeys look the same. So how are you going to prove a donkey belongs to you? Be'edim de ukav, the witnesses says that the saddle of the donkey belongs to you, or v'simanim de ukav, or you can prove with the simanim that the saddle belongs to you, hence the donkey belongs to you. Ema, if that's what I'm ema loy mahadrinale, I would think that's not enough for you to return it to its original owner. So that's why the Torah wrote donkey. Even if you're just bringing signs on the saddle, that you have to return it to its owner. Shar said the Kasav Rachman Lamali. Why did the Torah write you have to return an ox and a sheep? Shar, that teaches you the ox, the afila gizas novai, even the shearings of its tail, even the minor things on the ox. You can't just keep it for yourself and say, "Oh, I'm returning your ox, but let me keep the shearings of the tail." And a sheep, you can't say, "Oh, I'll return your sheep," but like Zizaisov, I'll keep the finder should be able to keep the wool. The answer is no. The way you found it, that's the entire item. The way it is, you have to return it. So the Gemara asks the question: "V'lichta rachman ashar." Let the Torah just write the word ox. That teaches you that afila gizas nova, even the tiny hairs on its tail, has to be returned to its original owner. The kolshkein sell ligizaisav, and certainly I would know that a sheep with all its shearings has to be returned to its owner. That you can't keep the whole wool on the sheep. Ella, so why did the Torah write seh? Ella Rava said, Chamar de boy Rabbi Huda said that delivery hakol kasha. These are one of those words where the Torah gives you an example. I have no idea why the Torah added the extra example of seh, sheep. Just saying the word ox would be enough. Why did the Torah write seh? This remains a difficulty. So the Gemara asks the question, maybe the Torah is even being so strict that if the animal does manure, you're not allowed to keep it. The finder has to return the manure to the animal. Answers the Gemara, no, that can't be. Certainly the owner sees that the finder is being busy cleaning up after his animal. He will allow him to keep the manure of the animal to use as fertilizer. That you don't have to return. Still, so we don't know what Seh teaches you. Says the Gemara, V'dilma l'simonim hudasa. Now, the Gemara wants to say, we're going to learn later on, it's not so clear that maybe min HaTorah, if a guy comes and gives you distinguished simonim on the item, you're not supposed to return it. The Rabbanan made it up that you're returning it. There's an opinion that way. So maybe the word seh teaches you, and the extra word seh teaches you that simonim are doraisa. That the fact that you return an item based on the simonim given by the owner is a Torah law. The Boilam, we have a question, Simonim Daraisa or the Rabbanim. Maybe that is Simonim Daraisa or the Rabbanim. We're going to see more about that in a moment. Kasarachmana, the Torah said, that proves it. Since we have an extra word in this Torah set that teaches us that the concept of a person who lost an item can just say, I can't prove with Adam that this item is mine, but I can give you a siman that's mine, and with the siman enough, the finder has to return it to the guy who claims it's his. And that's a Torah law. And we'll learn it from the extra word seh. But Amrei, the Rabbanan said, no, that's not true. Our Tana of the Mishnah said the word simonim next to the word simla, by the word clothing. Diktani ma simla miyuchedesh yesh bo simonim v'yesh la toivin chayav lahachsa av kol dovash yesh bo simonim v'yesh la toivin chayav lahachsa shma mina the said lavli simonim hu da'aser. If you just look at our Mishnah puts in the word simonim from the word simla, clothing. Now we don't know if why he put it there. It's obviously that our Tana of the Mishnah felt that the word seh does not teach you simonim, and we're going to see that even the word simla, maybe in our Tana of our Mishnah, does not teach you simonim either. So it is possible that seh teaches you something else. It doesn't teach you simonim, and we don't know what it teaches you, but it doesn't teach you simonim, and simonim will be drabanan anyway. We'll see more about that in a moment. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Asher toivad, if you lose something, prat le'aveda she'ein ba shava pruta, if you find an aveda that's not worth a penny, you don't have to return it. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Mitzasa, if you find something, prat le'aveda she'ein ba shava pruta, he learns it from the word umitzasa that excludes an aveda that has no pruta. So either you're learning it from Asher toivad, you lost something, or umitzasa, or you find something. It teaches you that if you lost or the person found something that's not worth a pruta, you don't have to return it. So the Gemara asks, "My benaya, why does one learn it from Asher Toivad and one learns it from umitzasa? What's the difference?" Amar Abaya mashmor darshan ikmenaya, teaching it's no real difference lahalacha. It's just a matter of where you learn it from. Mar nafkele Asher Toivad, umar nafkele umitzasa. One learned it from Asher Toivad, and the other one learned it umitzasa. Says the Gemara, if you learn it from Asher Toivad, what are you going to do with the word umitzasa? And so the Gemara, Rabbanai says from umitzasa you can learn the asli day mashma. It teaches you that the only time you have to return something if it belongs to a Jew. Even a goy's item, not only are you allowed to, ignore and not call it out, but even after you pick it up, you don't have to return it. Obviously, if the goy says it's his, you have to return it, but you don't have to go through the whole motions of announcing it that you found a lost item if you certain that this is a goy's item, and you learn that from umitzasa. So the Gemara says the opposite question. The one that learns the less than a shava pruta from the word mitzasa, what does he learn from the word asher toivat? That teaches you another din, like Rabbi Yochanan, what Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Yochanan said, in the name of Shimon Yochai, let's say you have a tanker, or the Titanic, that went down, or it got swept away by the river. Whoever finds it, even if it has a distinguished mark on it, you don't have to return it, because once it falls into the river, it's lost from everybody. And that you learned out from the word asher toivad mimenu. It's lost from him. And you find it, then you have to return it. A lost item is defined by something that's lost from its owner, but anybody has the potential to find it, not just a diver, a professional diver. But this item, most people cannot find it, and therefore it's considered. The Torah says, even if with a samanim or edim or anything like that, if you go down in a dive and you find something, you don't have to return it to its owner. The other one, Rabbi Yehuda, how did he know Rabbi Nais? From extra vav. The Tanakama, how did Rabbi Yochanan, how did he know Rabbi Yochanan's din? Nafkele mimenu. He learns it out from the extra word mimenu. Rabbi Yehuda, mimenu le mashma. He doesn't learn anything from the word mimenu. So basically, there's no major difference between if you learn it out from Asher Toivet or Rabbi Yehuda Mitzasa, that prat laveda shein by shava pruta. It's just a matter of semantics, how you learn that concept from the Torah. Rava says there is a difference. Pruta shehuzli ikbenel. Let's say you found it and it was worth a pruta, and then it went down in value. That could be the difference between where you learn it from. Manda masha toivad. When you lost it, it was worth a pruta ika. Then you have to return it. Manda amma mitzasa. But if you learn it from finding it, leika, because when he found it, or when he found it, and while it was in his possessions, it went down. It's not worth a pruta. You don't have to return it. Says the Gemara, but it doesn't, even if you learn it from Asher Toivad, but umitzasa, it has to be worth a penny when it's still in your hand. He still has that word umitzasa. You can't ignore that. Ella, the Gemara says, pruta shukra ikamenayu. It's the opposite. A pruta that it wasn't worth a pruta. And when you picked it up, it wasn't worth a pruta, and now it's worth a pruta. You have to return it. But the one who learns it from Asher Toivid, since when you found it, it wasn't worth a pruta, you don't have to return it. So the Gemara says that you do have to return it. But at the end of the day, when you found it, it wasn't worth a pruta. And he has the word Asher Toivet. The Torah clearly says that when you find it, it also has to be worth a pruta. Ella says the Gemara, and here's the bottom line: Pruta shehukra v'huzla v'chazer v'hukra. You have a penny. You found it was worth a penny, and then it went up. It went up, and then it went down below a penny. V'chazer v'hukra, and then it crossed this out. Pruta v'huzla v'chazer v'hukra. It was worth a penny when you found it. Then it went down to less than a penny, and then went back up to a penny. Ika benayu. Mandam asher toivad. When you lost it, ika, you have an obligation to return it. When you found it, it was worth a penny. When you're ready to return it, it was worth a penny. Who cares if in between it went down in value? But the other one that learns it from Mitzasa, it has to be worth a penny from the time that you lose it to the time that you found it. It has to maintain its value. If it goes down in value, you're not obligated to return it, even though it remained a pruta, it went up. Now the Gemara asks a question. This is the main topic. That fact that I returned an item to its owner, if he gives me a distinguished mark, a siman, is that midatora drabana? What's the difference? Now we raise the stakes a little bit, because if it's worth la'adure, we go to chazayna bebeis. La'adure get isha b'simanim. Do you have to return a get isha with simanim? If someone loses a get isha and then he gives simanim, proving that it's his. Yamet daraisa madrina. If the concept of simanim is daraisa, you would return it. Yamet rabbanam. If you say it's only drabbana. Ki avad rabbanam takanta. When did the rabbanam make up this din that you have to return an item if he gives you simanim b'mamoina with money? Because rabbanan have that power to make hefker bezdin hefker and force you to return an item that you found if the person who claims it's his gives you simanim. Alva b'yisura. But if it's dealing with isur daraisa, isuri nashim, then lo yav rabbanan. Rabbis didn't make that rule, and therefore, if you find a get, you don't have to return it to its owner. Because the Rabbanan didn't make that, the Rabbanan could not make that takana that you would have to return it, because you're dealing with Issa Daraisa, a get Isha, Eishes Ish. So the Gemara says like this. Let's bring a proof from a Mishnah. Af simla hoysim b'chlal kol elav loyim lakish v'lach loyim l'chamasam yuchai sheish l'sumam yesh l'toivim chayv l'hachas av kol dav sheish l'simonim yesh l'toivim chayv l'hachas. Our Mishnah seems to learn the idea of simonim from the word simla. So don't you see simonim is daraisa? And says the Gemara, no. Tana toivin itzruchalei simonim kedi nasva. Our Tana was just learning the concept that of yush, that as long as the guy was not miyayish, you have to return it. And simonim, he just put in the word simonim there, but it didn't mean that it's daraisa. It's like called an asmachta. To give a remez in the Torah for simonim, but really the concept of simonim is only durabana. Tashma, come in here. Chamor, to identify chamor, all you have to do, the Brisa says, bisimoni ukav. You give signs that the saddle belongs to you. So you see, simonim is enough. And says the Gemara, ema be'edei ukav. You bring witnesses that the saddle belongs to you. But edim is what you need to prove that something belongs to you. Simonim would not be enough. The Torah tells you, the Brisa says that it should be with you until your brother proves that the item belongs to him. What does the Brisa mean? Is it possible I would think that I should give it to my brother before he can prove that it's his? When he prove it, when he's proving himself to you, you have to see if he's being deceptive or not, if he's being truthful or not. My lab b'simanim. What does the Torah mean? You have to check out the simanim that he's giving you to see if it's valid. So we see that the simanim is the araisa. And it says Gemara loy be'edim. He has to prove that the item belongs to him. The only way he can prove it is if he brings witnesses. As long as he doesn't bring witnesses, then we don't believe it. A little bit more, and then we'll stop. Another minute. Tashma, come in here. In order to prove that a man is dead and to allow his wife to get married, the Eidim have to witness that they saw his face, and with his nose, they clearly saw that this person died. Even though, let's say they didn't see his face, but they see a distinguished mark on his body. He didn't see his face, or they see his suit or whatever, his suit, and they know that it was his suit. Even though if they didn't see his face, that's not good enough. They have to actually see the face with the nose. But the fact that simonim are not enough, shmanim, wouldn't that prove simonim lav daraisa? Simonim are not a good proof min Torah. And says the Gemara, Amri, I will tell you, really, simonim is a good proof. But you have to give the right simon. The gufay, if you say about a person, about his body, the arach v'gutz, that he's tall or short, that's not a definitive mark. That's not a definitive simon. So that wouldn't work even in a Torah. Kalev, you want to say about his suit, how it looked? The chayshinin l'she'ela. Here, we are concerned that maybe it wasn't his suit. Maybe the suit that you saw was actually his, but maybe he lent it to somebody else. So therefore, the person dead in that suit was not the person who you think it is. So the Gemara says, if we're always concerned that maybe something is borrowed, if a guy gives simonim that the saddle belongs to him, how could you return him the donkey? Maybe somebody borrowed the saddle. Maybe he lent the saddle to somebody else, and the donkey belongs to somebody else. So the Gemara says, it's a good valid point, but a saddle for a donkey, a person doesn't usually lend out. If it's not, it's like a crown for a tooth. It has to be designed for this particular chamar. Otherwise, it's very uncomfortable for the chamar. So saddles are not usually lent out. So if you bring a sign that the saddle is yours, we can assume that the donkey is yours as well. We're not worried that you lent out the suit, that the guy lent out a suit. But if you give the wrong sign in the suit, you say it was a blue suit or a green suit, that could be anybody. One more question. That we learned. Let's say you find a person, a shliach lost a get. If he finds it right away, then he's allowed to assume that this is the get that he lost. But a shliach he lost it for a long time, can't find it. Then he finds it tied to his wallet or arniki or his purse or tabas or his ring. Or he found it between his clothing. Even if you find it a long time after, kasher, you could assume that's the get that you lost, and it's still the shliach is entitled to give it over and finish his shlichus, giving it over to the woman. If people lend things out, so how do you know if you find the get tied to his purse, his wallet, or his ring? Maybe he lent out those things, and the person returned it with the get with a get attached, and the shliach that finds it is finding a get belonging to somebody else, belonging to the person he lent his ring, purse, or a wallet at. Answers the Gemara. Amri will say like this: Loy. People don't lend their wallet, their purse, and the ring, the signet ring. Why? You don't lend your wallet or purse to somebody else. It's not a good sign. It's not good luck to lend your wallet to somebody else. It's almost like you're selling your mazel, Rashi says. And finally, the tabas, you don't let your signet ring out because somebody could forge your signet ring and sign your name somewhere. Therefore, if you find the get, if Shliach finds a get tied to those places, you can assume that it is his. We'll continue this discussion of Simon Deraisa, the Rabbanan, tomorrow. Okay, we'll stop here.
Shkaya, thank you.
Okay,
Good evening.